In the dense forests of northern Idaho, nestled between the Bitterroot Mountains and the Clearwater River, there existed a secluded ranch that had once been a symbol of harmony between humans and wildlife. For the Wallace family, this ranch had been their home for generations. Their story, however, would not be remembered for its quiet tranquility, but for the tragedy that unfolded when Ellie Wallace, a young girl with a bond to nature, formed an unlikely friendship with a wild grizzly bear named Thor. It was the summer of 1997 when Ellie first encountered Thor. The grizzly, a young cub, had wandered too close to the Wallace property after losing his mother in a conflict with local hunters. Ellie, only 9 years old, found him near the barn, his large, curious eyes a mixture of fear and curiosity. The young bear, weak from hunger and dehydration, had been lured in by the smell of food. Instead of calling for help, Ellie approached the bear cautiously, offering him food she had set out for the family's livestock. Over the course of several weeks, Ellie formed a bond with the cub, feeding him and slowly gaining his trust. Her parents, who were both wildlife enthusiasts and biologists, watched this unusual connection with mixed emotions. Ellie's father, Thomas Wallace, had always emphasized the importance of respecting wildlife from a distance, but Ellie's compassion for the bear was undeniable. In her heart, Thor wasn't just an animal, he was her friend. By the time Ellie was 12, Thor had grown into a formidable 400-pound adolescent bear. Despite his size and strength, he never showed aggression toward Ellie or her family. He was a constant presence on the ranch, often found near Ellie's treehouse, watching her from below as she played. The community had grown accustomed to Thor's presence, and many marveled at the unique bond the girl shared with the wild creature. But as the years passed, there were whispers of concern. One winter evening, a series of attacks on livestock was reported in the area. Several farmers had lost cattle, and rumors spread that a bear was responsible. Ellie's parents, concerned for both Thor and the surrounding community, decided to seek the help of wildlife experts. A team of researchers from the University of Montana's Wildlife Department, led by Dr. Grace Holloway, arrived at the Wallace Ranch. They were initially skeptical about the bond between Ellie and Thor, but their interest in Thor's behavior soon took precedence. They insisted that the bear be taken for study, with the promise that he would be returned to the wild once the research was complete. Ellie's parents, though hesitant, agreed. They understood the need for scientific understanding of wildlife, but Ellie was devastated. The bear, who had been her constant companion, was taken away in a cage, driven to a remote research facility in Bozeman, Montana. For the next 2 years, Thor underwent various behavioral studies. Dr. Holloway and her team conducted experiments on the bear, assessing his interaction with other wildlife and testing his ability to adapt to new environments. But there was a glaring issue with the research that would have dire consequences. Thor's connection to Ellie had not been accounted for. The researchers, despite their best intentions, underestimated the psychological toll that the separation would take on both the bear and the girl. Thor's behavior began to change. He became more aggressive and unpredictable. When he was finally released into the wild in 2004, he was a different bear than the one Ellie had known. Ellie, now 16, had never stopped thinking about Thor. She visited the forests near her home often, hoping for a glimpse of him, but she had heard nothing for years. Her parents, still conflicted about their decision, reassured her that the bear was better off in the wild. They believed the research had helped, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. In the spring of 2007, 3 years after Thor's release, Ellie decided to go deeper into the woods than she ever had before. She believed that if she could find Thor, she could calm him and restore their friendship. Armed with nothing but a backpack and the hope of seeing her old companion again, she set off on what would be her final journey. As the days passed, Ellie's search became more desperate. The further she ventured into the forest, the more she encountered signs of Thor's presence: torn trees, claw marks, and large tracks in the mud. By the 5th day, she had reached the area where Thor had last been sighted. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear, but she was determined to reconnect with him. At dusk, as Ellie rested near a small clearing, she heard a rustling in the bushes. Her heart skipped a beat as a shadow moved toward her. In the fading light, Ellie could just make out the massive form of Thor, his fur matted with dirt and his eyes wild with a primal hunger. For a moment, Ellie froze, unsure if it was really Thor. The bear's size and demeanor had changed drastically. He no longer recognized her as a friend. The researchers had unknowingly released a creature that had forgotten its bond to humanity. In an instant, Thor lunged at Ellie. Her screams echoed through the forest as the bear knocked her to the ground. Ellie fought back with all her strength, but it was futile. Thor, now an adult grizzly, was far too powerful. In mere moments, the bear's claws and teeth found their mark. Ellie's life was claimed in the same woods she had once loved. When Ellie's body was discovered by search teams days later, the news spread like wildfire. The Wallace family, devastated by their daughter's death, could hardly comprehend the sequence of events that had led to such a tragic outcome. The community, too, was left in shock. Many had witnessed Ellie's bond with Thor and had once marveled at the idea of a girl and a grizzly living in harmony. But in the wake of Ellie's death, questions were raised about the ethics of wildlife experimentation and the potential dangers of interacting with wild animals. The incident prompted a widespread debate about wildlife management, the risks of domestication, and the morality of taking animals from the wild for research. Local authorities, along with wildlife conservation groups, implemented new policies regarding human-wildlife interactions and stricter regulations on wildlife experimentation. Ellie's story, while tragic, serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of taming wild animals, no matter how innocent the intention. Thor, once a symbol of innocence and companionship, was ultimately a wild animal, driven by instincts far beyond the control of any human. While Ellie's compassion for Thor was genuine, it was a misguided belief that she could tame the untamable. In hindsight, the true tragedy was not just Ellie's death, but the loss of understanding about the true nature of wild creatures. Grizzly bears, like all wild animals, are not pets. They are part of complex ecosystems, and their behaviors are shaped by survival instincts that no amount of interaction can change. The lessons learned from Ellie's tragic death have far-reaching implications for how humans interact with wildlife. As we continue to encroach on their natural habitats, it is crucial that we respect the boundaries of the animal kingdom. No matter how profound the connection between humans and animals may seem, the wild will always have its own rules, rules that can never be ignored without consequences. Story 2? In the wild, untamed landscapes of Alaska, where the majestic mountains kiss the sky and the frozen tundra stretches endlessly into the horizon, there are stories of both awe and horror, of beauty and brutality. One such tale is that of Emma Larson, a young girl from the small town of Nome, Alaska, who formed an extraordinary bond with a polar bear. What began as an innocent love for a rare, misunderstood animal would eventually end in tragedy, a tragedy that would teach the world about the thin line between the human desire to control nature and the inherent dangers of its wild creatures. The beginning of the bond, a polar bear named Luna. Robert, known for his deep understanding of wildlife behavior, made a controversial decision. He and his colleagues decided to bring the cub to a local wildlife rehabilitation center rather than euthanize her. Emma, curious and deeply fascinated by animals, visited the facility with her father during her school breaks. There, she met the cub, a beautiful, white-furred creature who, despite her fear of humans, seemed to show an odd sense of curiosity and trust toward Emma. Robert and his team took great care in ensuring the cub's health and safety. But as the months passed, they began to notice the bear's growing attachment to Emma. Over time, this bond deepened. Robert, seeing the potential for both scientific study and the chance to give Emma a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, allowed the bear, named Luna, to live in a large enclosed area on their family property. Emma and Luna became inseparable companions, spending days together playing in the snow and exploring the Alaskan wilderness. While their unusual relationship garnered some local attention, it wasn't until Luna reached her second year of life that the complexities of keeping such a wild animal in captivity became undeniable. Despite being raised in a controlled environment, Luna's instincts were undeniable. She began showing signs of aggression as she matured, sometimes lashing out when startled or frustrated. Yet Emma, deeply attached to her companion, insisted that Luna would never pose a threat. Her father, however, was beginning to worry. The intervention, experimentation, and the price of human intervention. By 1995, Emma and Luna's bond had become well known in the community, and their story was spreading across the state. Local officials, alarmed by the growing attention and concerns about the potential danger of a polar bear in such close proximity to humans, began pressuring the Larsons to hand Luna over to the authorities. The situation was complicated further by the arrival of researchers from the University of Alaska Anchorage, who were interested in studying Luna's behavior in a controlled setting. In the summer of that year, after much deliberation, Robert reluctantly agreed to release Luna to the university. They promised that Luna would be kept in a large, naturalistic environment, one where her behavior could be studied for the benefit of both wildlife conservation and human safety. Emma, devastated by the decision, insisted on visiting her once a week, convinced that Luna could never be anything but a gentle giant. But when Emma visited in late August 1995, she found the place eerily quiet. Luna had been moved to a different facility far outside the city, one that was secretive and inaccessible to the public. Robert explained that Luna was undergoing experiments to monitor her behavior and assess her survival abilities in the wild. Emma, still holding on to hope, was told by the researchers that Luna would eventually be released into the Arctic wilderness, where she belonged. In early 1996, Luna was released into the wilds of the Arctic, far from the familiar surroundings of Nome. Emma was heartbroken, but she understood the need for the bear to return to her natural habitat. Her father, however, remained deeply troubled by the ethical dilemma he faced. The line between scientific study and the potential exploitation of an animal's suffering was thin. He knew that while Luna had been raised in captivity, the complexities of survival in the wild were something no one could predict. Months turned into years, and Emma grew up, focusing on her studies and pursuing a career as a wildlife conservationist. Yet, the memory of Luna lingered in her heart. Every year, Emma would return to Nome to visit her parents, who had since moved to a smaller home by the coast. She would sometimes wonder about Luna's fate, though she never spoke much about the bear to anyone. That is, until the summer of 2003. On a cold October morning in 2003, Emma returned to the family cabin after years of working with endangered species in the lower 48. As she made her way to the cabin from the airport, she heard a familiar sound, a low, rumbling growl. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat as the wind carried the scent of something wild. Her heart raced, and a sense of dread washed over her. Turning a corner, she spotted a massive figure moving through the trees. It was Luna. Emma's first instinct was to run toward the bear, to call out her name, but something in Luna's posture stopped her. The polar bear was no longer the playful cub Emma had known. She was a massive, mature female with a dangerous, predatory look in her eyes. Emma froze in place, fear creeping into her chest as she realized that the bond between them had been severed by years of survival in the wild. This was no longer the same bear. Luna growled again, this time louder, and Emma, overwhelmed by both fear and heartbreak, began to back away slowly. Luna's eyes locked onto her, and Emma could see in that gaze not the playful curiosity of a cub, but the cold, calculating intelligence of a predator. The bond between them, once so pure and innocent, had been shattered by time and nature. The next few moments unfolded in a blur. Luna charged, moving faster than Emma could react. She screamed, but it was too late. The polar bear was upon her, its massive claws swiping at her in a blur of white and blood. Emma tried to defend herself with a hunting knife she had on her belt, but the effort was futile against the sheer strength of the bear. In a matter of moments, the struggle ended, and Emma lay motionless in the snow, her life extinguished in an instant. The authorities arrived shortly after the attack, and Luna was tracked and tranquilized. She was taken back to the wildlife center, where she had once been held, but it was too late for Emma. Her death sent shockwaves through the community and reignited the debate about the ethics of human intervention in the lives of wild animals. Should Luna have been allowed to stay with Emma, or was her release into the wild always inevitable? In the years that followed, the story of Emma and Luna became a cautionary tale for wildlife researchers and conservationists. It was a reminder that while humans can form deep emotional bonds with animals, the line between affection and danger is razor thin. The natural world operates by its own rules, and no amount of human intervention can fully tame or control it. Story 3. Story 6. In the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, where towering evergreens block the sunlight and the air smells of damp earth and pine, lives a story of an unlikely bond between a young Canadian girl, a wild bear, and an act of courage that would save a life. The tale unfolds against the backdrop of Canada's rugged wilderness, a place where survival and nature intertwine in ways both beautiful and dangerous. This is a story of survival, courage, and the unspoken connection between humans and wildlife, offering timeless lessons on respect, empathy, and the power of kindness. In 2005, when Emma Harris was just 11 years old, she lived on the outskirts of Vancouver, British Columbia, with her parents. Their house, nestled at the edge of a small river, was surrounded by the thick woods of the Coast Mountains. It was the kind of place where nature and humanity met at the fringes, where bears occasionally wandered close to homes, and where the sound of rushing water provided a constant lullaby. Emma, curious and adventurous, often spent her afternoons exploring the nearby riverbanks, watching salmon struggle upstream and spotting wildlife in the dense underbrush. One late autumn afternoon, a strong current swept through the river, dislodging a large log. As Emma wandered down to the water's edge, she saw an adult black bear struggling in the churning water. The bear was caught, thrashing helplessly as the current pulled it downstream, threatening to drown the animal. Without hesitation, Emma sprang into action. She rushed to the riverbank, her heart pounding with adrenaline, and found an old rope in the shed nearby. Her mind raced, thinking quickly about what she had learned from her father, who worked as a wildlife biologist. He had always taught her the importance of respecting animals, but also the need to act decisively in moments of crisis. Emma tied the rope to a sturdy tree and waded into the cold, fast-moving water. She reached out, struggling to keep her balance against the current, and managed to grab hold of the bear's thick fur. The animal was exhausted, its energy waning, but it still fought against the rope, terrified of the human who had come to its aid. Emma spoke softly, attempting to calm the bear, and carefully pulled it toward the bank. It was a dangerous and exhausting task, but after what felt like an eternity, Emma finally managed to drag the bear to safety, pulling it onto the muddy shore. Breathing heavily, soaked to the bone, Emma watched as the bear regained its composure, its breathing slow but steady. For a few moments, the bear simply lay there, looking at Emma with cautious eyes. Then, to her surprise, it stood up, giving a soft grunt of acknowledgement, and lumbered back into the forest, disappearing into the trees. That day, Emma Harris had saved a life, though at the time she had no idea how deeply this act of kindness would impact her own future. Years passed, and Emma grew into a young woman. She graduated from high school and eventually decided to pursue a degree in environmental science, her love for nature and wildlife only deepening with time. She moved to a small apartment in Vancouver, but her heart always yearned for the wilderness, where she had felt most alive. In the summer of 2016, at the age of 22, Emma returned to her family home for a brief visit. She had not been back in years, and the river's rush had always been a comforting sound to her. As she walked along the familiar trail to the water's edge, she was stunned to see a familiar shape standing at the riverbank. It was the bear, the same one she had saved a decade earlier. The bear, now larger and older, stood still as Emma approached. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she feared that the animal might not remember her. But to her amazement, the bear turned its head, locking eyes with her, and let out a soft grunt, almost as if acknowledging her presence. Emma, overwhelmed by the moment, stood still, waiting for the bear to make its move. After a tense moment, the bear slowly ambled back into the forest, disappearing as quietly as it had appeared. Emma was left standing at the water's edge, her mind racing with a mixture of disbelief and awe. The bond that had formed that day in 2005 was something beyond words. Something that she could not explain, but would always carry with her. Just 3 years later, in 2019, Emma's life would take an unexpected and harrowing turn. She had just started a new job as a park ranger in British Columbia's Kootzwa National Park. Emma had always wanted to work in the park system, protecting the wilderness she loved, and the position felt like the perfect culmination of her years of study and passion. One fateful afternoon in mid-November, Emma was on a routine patrol in the dense woods near the edge of the park. The air was crisp, and the ground was covered in a thick carpet of fallen leaves. She had just finished checking a trail when she noticed a figure emerging from the trees. It was a man, disheveled and wild-eyed, his clothes torn and his movements erratic. Before Emma could react, he lunged at her, overpowering her with a sudden burst of strength. He had a knife! Emma's heart raced as he dragged her deeper into the forest, the noise of her struggle muffled by the thick woods. She knew she had to act quickly. The man was unstable, and his intentions were clear. Fear surged through her veins, but Emma's training as a ranger kicked in. She had always been taught to remain calm, to think quickly in emergencies. But this time, it wasn't enough. The man's grip on her tightened, and Emma realized that she might not make it out of this alive. Just as he was about to drag her further into the wilderness, Emma heard a familiar sound. A low growl, almost a rumble, coming from the trees. The man paused, looking around nervously. The growl grew louder, and suddenly from the underbrush the bear appeared. The same bear that Emma had saved all those years ago. The man froze in terror, his eyes wide as the bear, now fully grown and imposing, approached. The bear did not rush, but instead moved slowly, deliberately, as if it recognized Emma's distress. It stood at the edge of the clearing, its massive frame casting a shadow over both the man and Emma. The man, now trembling, dropped the knife and backed away, unable to move, his legs shaking. Emma took the opportunity to break free. She stumbled back, gasping for breath, as the bear continued to stare down the would-be kidnapper. The man's terror was palpable, and he turned and fled, disappearing into the forest, not daring to look back. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the bear, who stood firm and unwavering in the clearing. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if satisfied that the threat had been removed, the bear turned and loped back into the forest, disappearing as quietly as it had arrived. Lessons learned. A life saved, a bond unbroken. In the days that followed, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had witnessed something extraordinary. The bear had saved her life, just as she had once saved its own. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes the bonds we create with the natural world are more profound than we can fully understand. There was no logical explanation for why the bear had returned, but Emma knew deep down that it was a message, one that connected her past, present, and future in a way she could never have imagined. This experience, along with her years of working in the wild, shaped Emma's understanding of nature and the creatures within it. She realized that the world was full of stories of reciprocity, where the lines between predator and prey, human and animal, blurred in the most unexpected ways. She also understood that her love for wildlife had always been about more than just admiration. It was about respect, protection, and recognizing the deep interconnection between all living beings. Emma's story is a powerful reminder that our relationships with nature are often more complex and meaningful than we may initially realize. In saving the bear, Emma had created a bond that transcended time, and in return, the bear had repaid her kindness in the most extraordinary of ways. Her story offers invaluable lessons for those who wish to connect with the natural world. Respect wildlife. Always treat animals with care and respect. They are not just part of the ecosystem, they are sentient beings with their own needs and instincts. Act quickly in crisis. Emma's ability to think and act swiftly in moments of danger was key to saving both the bear and herself. Whether dealing with wildlife or emergencies, staying calm and clear-headed is essential. Recognize the interconnectedness of all life. Nature does not operate in isolation. Every action we take impacts the broader web of life. Understanding this is crucial for our survival and for the preservation of the planet. As Emma now works as a lead ranger and wildlife conservationist, her life continues to be shaped by the lessons she learned from both the bear and her own experiences. She lives by a simple yet powerful philosophy. If you give back to nature, it will return the favor in ways you can't always foresee. If you found this video insightful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for the latest videos on wildlife safety, survival tips, and fascinating animal stories. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.